Ferrari takes the podium with Charles Leclerc in the Spanish Grand Prix, the ninth round of the 2025 Formula One Championship. The Monegasque driver took advantage of Red Bull's different strategy to get ahead of Max Verstappen, who was forced to switch to hard tires after the safety car. For once, Lady Luck smiled on Charles Leclerc, who had been struggling on the mediums up until the safety car was deployed. Even during the race, it was clear that the Maranello car performed better on soft tires at the Montmeló circuit, especially with a lighter fuel load. The Monegasque driver complained about a lack of balance on the mediums as the car got lighter. In the third stint, in fact, Lewis Hamilton, running on the red compound, was performing better than his Maranello teammate, who, without the safety car intervention, would likely have lost the position to George Russell. During the first stint, all front-running drivers started on soft tires in a two-stop race. Lewis Hamilton, who was fourth after a good start, lost on average 7/10 per lap compared to the McLaren MCL39 of Lando Norris. The Briton tried to stay close to his compatriot but managed the used tires from Saturday's qualifying session incorrectly. Lewis Hamilton therefore experienced a rise in lap times after the sixth lap, suffering about half a tenth of degradation per lap based on the telemetry data collected from the race at the Circuit de Catalunya, Barcelona. Charles Leclerc, on the other hand, slightly improved his pace after a delayed team order to swap positions, but failed to limit the degradation. By the end of the first stint, Charles Leclerc was losing over 3/10 compared to Oscar Piastri. At the front of the race, the Australian immediately pushed with Max Verstappen gaining around a tenth per lap. The Dutchman repeatedly complained over the radio about a lack of grip compared to the McLaren duo and pitted early after being overtaken by Lando Norris. In the second third of the Spanish Grand Prix, Max Verstappen used the red tires to close the gap to McLaren, who had extended their first stint. The world champion's pace was strong until lap 10. Afterwards, he again reported a lack of confidence with the tires and issues with braking and rotation due to the lack of grip in the slower sections. At McLaren, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri maintained a similar pace. The British driver started the stint more cautiously, gaining an advantage in the middle phase. Oscar Piastri, instead, struggled during the central laps due to early graining on his tires. Oscar needed a few laps to clean up the tires and return to his teammates' pace. On the other hand, Ferrari introduced the medium tires more cautiously. The target lap time from the Maranello pit wall was 1:20.5 per lap in order to extend tire life and gain a compound advantage at the end of the stint. From the telemetry data related to the degradation stats, we can notice that both drivers' lap times started to drop after the eighth lap, a solid second part of the race also for George Russell, who was lapping 1/10 slower than Lewis Hamilton. The Mercedes driver recovered about 2 seconds on his compatriot thanks to better tire management. George Russell's performance plateaued after lap 10 due to graining, preventing an overtaking attempt. Lewis Hamilton, also struggling more than Charles Leclerc on the mediums, complained about a lack of rear grip and was forced to use a greater slip angle. This increased tire temperature, causing him to lose about 3 seconds of pace in the final 5 laps of the stint. In the third stint, Ferrari opted for a split strategy between the two drivers. Lewis Hamilton ran a shorter stint, lapping about a second faster than his Maranello teammate. However, by extending the middle section, the Briton lost track position to George Russell, but again showed the SF25's superior form on the red compound. Charles Leclerc, in fact, repeatedly complained over the radio about a lack of grip, suffering a steady drop in tire performance. In the end, the safety car neutralized Red Bull's strategy, which had been built around a 3-stop plan to shake things up. Max Verstappen, who would have finished behind the McLaren pair regardless, restarted on hard tires and lost 2 positions. Charles Leclerc took advantage of this, securing a podium in the Spanish Grand Prix after starting from 7th on the grid. The final phase was more difficult for Lewis Hamilton, who struggled more with the soft tire used in the qualifying session. The Briton was penalized by the final stop, having to give up a position even to the Sauber Nico Hülkenberg, who was on fresh set of soft tires. Now, in its 55th edition, the Spanish Grand Prix is one of the most tradition-rich and well-established events on the Formula One calendar, as well as the most demanding and indicative from a technical standpoint. As expected, despite the FIA's tightening of the rules on front-wing flexibility, the Barcelona event did not shake up the competitive order, but still delivered plenty of action, thanks both to on-track battles and strategies. Over the 66 laps that counted for championship points, the fight for victory was predictable, unlike the battles for other positions, from the podium down to the back of the field. Before the Spanish Grand Prix, Ferrari was talking about a possible performance reset due to the crackdown on front-wing flexibility, which came into effect starting with the Barcelona weekend. This hope, however, remained just that for the Italian side and others as well, since the competitive order shown at the 9th round of the 2025 Formula One season was entirely similar to what had been seen in previous races. The Maranello team, having consistently been between the third and fourth fastest teams fighting with Mercedes, confirmed this form at the end of the Catalan race, securing a lucky podium with Charles Leclerc, who finished third after various incidents, and a mediocre sixth place with Lewis Hamilton, who even finished behind Nico Hülkenberg's stake. The situation was essentially unchanged compared to before the race, perhaps only slightly better in the gaps, which the two drivers were aware of, and had sought to temper expectations after the excellent but isolated Monaco Grand Prix. In short, they wanted to bring the environment back to normal without giving false illusions of a hoped-for but unexpected reset of the competitive order. As the facts later showed, disproving what had been only a hope that emerged during the first free practice session, where there was a good reshuffling, with the SF25 appearing very strong. This soon faded as the race approached, with the Italian car returning to being slow and unpleasant for the drivers. It was left fighting only with the struggling Mercedes and well behind McLaren and Red Bull, regardless of strategy. In summary, it was a race in which Ferrari achieved its pre-race objective, although not entirely deserved on track, as explained by team principal Frederic Vasseur in an interview with Sky Sport F1. Setting aside the Spanish Grand Prix, Frederic Vasseur spoke about the trio of races in Imola, Monaco, and Spain, which concluded the first triple-header of the season, praising the Maranello team's progress while emphasizing that there is still a lot of work to do to return to the top. The French manager expressed satisfaction with the recent triple of races, noting that the team had made a step forward across Imola, Monaco, and Spain. The former Alfa Romeo team principal acknowledged that they could have been third on Saturday at the end of the qualifying session, but ultimately they secured a podium and second place in the Constructors' Championship, overtaking Red Bull. He stressed that much work remains to be done, and the goal remains to perform well without focusing too much on the championship, similar to their approach in 2024. With 15 races remaining, the Ferrari team principal pointed out that they would proceed step by step to close the gap on McLaren, which is currently far ahead, but they are trying to reduce the deficit as soon as possible.